Do you want to pass the Florida real estate exam on your first try? In this video, we'll cover 20 essential practice questions that focus on the most common topics you'll face on the state exam. We'll go over leaving a brokerage and taking listings, advertising your own property, handling escrow funds correctly, antitrust laws, penalties, suspensions, and how the Real Estate Recovery Fund works, including who can issue a summary suspension. Each question is designed to help you think like a professional and understand the reasoning behind every correct answer, so you can walk into your exam fully prepared and confident. This is just a small preview of our complete review course, where we go in-depth on every section of the Florida real estate exam. Find the full course through the link in the description below. If you find this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more lessons, tips, and exam strategies to help you pass on your first try. Let's jump right in. Question 42. A sales associate leaves Realty Inc. and moves to another brokerage. Upon leaving, they take all the listings they created while working at Realty Incorporated. In this situation, the sales associate is guilty of larceny. Question 43. A sales associate owns an oceanfront lot that is listed for $65,000 with the brokerage they work for. The associate is willing to accept a lower price if they sell it on their own. In this situation, the sales associate, the correct answer is D. He can pay for the advertising personally. The key here is if he sells it on his own. Guys, pay attention to these patterns. Whenever it says if he sells it on his own, it means he must pay for the advertising out of his own pocket. That will always be the key in this type of question. Question 44. To prevent the company's account from being overdrawn, a broker withdraws $200 from the sales escrow account and deposits it into the company's business account. Which of the following is incorrect? Guys, what the broker did is serious. You cannot touch even $1 from the escrow account. That's a trust account, and it holds other people's money. So this is wrong. What he did is wrong. They're asking for what's incorrect. Is he committing the crime of conversion? Yes, because he's misappropriating funds. So is that the answer? No, because they're asking for the incorrect statement. Could he be subject to suspension or revocation of his license? Yes. So that's not the answer either. Could he be fined for an administrative violation? That could happen, so it's not the answer. Is he acting according to the law? There's the answer, because that's what's incorrect. He is not acting according to the law. That's the right answer. It's letter D. Whatever comes after that isn't really important, because once it says acting according to the law, that's the one we're looking for. Question 45. And the last question of this chapter. Smith & Brown, both separate entities, are the only brokers in the Key West area. They agree to accept only listings that pay a commission of 7.5% or higher. Is this agreement legal? No, because it's a violation of U.S. antitrust law. I told you before, anything that involves commission fixing is considered antitrust, anti-monopoly. And with that, we finish Chapter 5. Let's begin Chapter 6. Chapter 6 only represents 2 points on the exam, but even though it's just 2 points, we're not going to skip it. We're going to study everything. Question 46. It says here, a violation of Chapter 475 does not result in. The answer is that it cannot cause a $10,000 fine per violation because the maximum fine is $5,000 per transaction. Question 47. The Florida Real Estate Recovery Fund. You must know this by heart. It is funded by the fees paid by licensees. Question 48. Which of the following penalties may the FRAC impose on a broker found guilty of a minor violation when it's the first offense? The answer is a notice of noncompliance. Whenever it's a minor violation and it's the first time the offense happens, it's only a notice of noncompliance. Question 49. Now, Pay attention, everyone. You need to know this by memory. What type of offense is performing real estate services without a license? It's a third-degree felony. And remember that a third-degree felony is punishable by up to 5 years in prison and/or a fine of up to $5,000. Question 50. The clearest way to express the difference between revocation and suspension is revocation is a more severe punishment than suspension. Now, let's review. Suspension is temporary, up to 10 years. Revocation is permanent? No, not always. There are 2 cases where revocation is not permanent, so it can't be B. Revocation lasts up to 10 years? No, that applies to suspension. Suspension is permanent? No, it's not permanent. So between A and B, the correct one is A, because B is incorrect. Revocation is almost always permanent, but not always. Therefore, A is the right answer. Revocation is a stronger punishment than suspension. Question 51. Now, look at how this question begins. Except when complying with an escrow disbursement order, the payment of any amount from the Real Estate Recovery Fund to settle a claim against a licensee will result in the license being automatically. Now look, at first I have no idea what it's referring to, but then they mention the recovery fund. Okay, now it makes sense. That means that if money is paid out from the recovery fund, the license of the person responsible is automatically suspended until they repay the fund in full. So, suspended for up to 10 years? No, suspended until the money is reimbursed to the fund? Yes, that's the answer. Question 52. A broker lists a property with maliciously false information. What could happen to that broker's license? The FRAC may open an investigation. That's letter C. Let's break down why the others don't fit. Option A can't be correct, because the only way a license can be canceled is when the licensee requests it voluntarily, meaning they no longer want to be in the business. Revocation of the license is too severe for this situation, so that's not it either. Automatic suspension is also not correct because automatic suspension only occurs when the recovery fund pays out compensation due to that licensee's actions. So the only possible answer here is the FRAC may open an investigation. Question 53. According to the real estate law, which of the following violations is considered a first-degree misdemeanor? There's only one, and you must memorize it. Rental information lists. That's the keyword. So the correct answer is A, charging a fee but failing to provide accurate and updated rental information. That's the only violation classified as a first-degree misdemeanor, guys. The only one. Question 54. A complaint filed against an unlicensed person may be investigated by the DBPR if a licensed person is involved? No. It corresponds to a violation of Florida real estate law? Yes, that's the answer. One of the parties suffered financial harm? Not necessary. A complaint can be filed even without financial loss. It was submitted in writing? Also not required. Complaints can be verbal or even anonymous. So the correct answer is B. It can be investigated if it involves a violation of Florida real estate law. Question 55. If a broker advertises one of their listings in a misleading way, either in form or content, nothing will happen because advertising is not regulated. False. They can be fined $10,000 by the FRAC? No, because the maximum fine is $5,000. They could go to jail for up to 5 years? No, that only applies to unlicensed activity. So, by elimination, the correct answer is they could receive an administrative fine. Question 56. Which of the following does not require a license suspension? When a licensee changes their personal address. That's the only one that doesn't apply because all the others are considered violations. Changing your personal address is not a violation. Question 57. What happens if a licensee who has been charged does not respond to an administrative complaint? The answer is the Commission will proceed with the hearing. It's not a $100 fine, not 90 days in jail, and not an automatic suspension, because automatic suspension only occurs when the recovery fund has to intervene. So here, the only correct answer is the Commission proceeds with the hearing. Question 58. Violations that cannot be resolved with a notice of noncompliance must proceed according to the law, meaning they go through a Florida administrative procedure under Chapter 120 of the Florida statutes. Chapter 120 is the one that explains how licensees are disciplined. Question 59. According to Section 475.42 Florida statutes, when a licensee uses false or misleading advertising to sell a property, what type of offense are they committing and what is the possible fine? Let's analyze second degree and up to $500. That's the correct answer. First degree and up to $1,000? No, because that only applies to rental lists. Third degree and up to $5,000? No, that applies to working without a license. Second degree and up to $500? That's the correct answer. Now, let's review and summarize the types of offenses. All violations against Chapter 475 are considered second-degree misdemeanors and are punishable by up to 60 days in jail and/or a fine of up to $500. But there are two exceptions you must memorize for the exam. Practicing real estate without a license. This is a felony of the third degree, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and/or a fine of up to $5,000. Rental information lists. Violations related to these are a first-degree misdemeanor, punishable by up to 1 year in jail and/or a fine of up to $1,000. If you memorize that, you've just earned 2 more points on the state exam, because they can ask either the type of crime or its specific penalty. Next question: who has the authority to issue a summary suspension? You need to memorize this answer. The correct answer is the Secretary of the DBPR or their authorized representative. They are the only ones who can issue a summary suspension.